So picture this, you have finished your prelims and now it's time to revise for O-levels, but you're not very clear on the direction you should take. What should you prioritize and focus most on for this period when revising for O-levels? So that's why I went through this mini revision guide with my students, and although it's made for my students, I think you'll still benefit greatly from this video. So here it is, enjoy. Now you're after prelims, right? And you are approaching O-levels. What do? Your first thing, review your prelim results. A lot of people don't do this for some reason, because maybe the teachers rush through also, and then quickly you're moving on to just doing more revision. But you miss out so much valuable lessons from the questions you got wrong. So please do your corrections properly, okay? Do it properly. Quality is more important than quantity. So if you find out why you got them wrong, you will be able to correct your misconceptions, your thought process that was wrong. And then you will not make the same thing in O-levels. It's so obvious, right? But so many people slack on this. They don't do it properly. Okay, next one, if you're my student, so if you don't understand, ask me if you don't know why you got the question wrong. Some people are already doing that. And then compile what I call a suck list, meaning the things that you are not good at. So there are two types of items you should compile, okay? One is the question types. So you notice that, hey, this question, I got it wrong. And it's usually a same question type, like maybe graph drawing. And then you're always like not labeling your axes correctly, forgetting stuff, not accurately plotting, the line is wrong or something. That's a question type that you're not good at. So you must put it in your list, okay? Another example, quoting data questions, where they say, oh, use the information in the table or in the graph. Then you tend to miss out. Or maybe you just quote data all the way and you don't explain the data when they ask you to explain. Find those question types and then compile them. Next one is content gaps. So the content one is find what are the subtopics or sub-concepts that you did not know well, which cost you the marks. So if you didn't know how to explain something and that's why you lost the marks, that is a proof that, hey, there's a content gap there. So even if you know but you failed to remember, that's also considered content gap, okay? So those are the content that needs revising. Then hold yourself accountable. I recommend that you send me your list. So this is after you go through a prelim paper, you can get the list, right? Compile a list, send me your list. Some people are already sending me their list, which is nice. So this is useful for you before O-levels. Because a few days before, right? Or maybe just one day before, you're going to review this list again. You're going to check, did I improve? Do I know all these things? Do I know all these subtopics now? Can I explain them? And then sometimes you realize that, hey, this one I still don't know how to explain. And it's good that you have the list because it is like a red flag, it's a warning for all those things which you are weak at, okay? So I did this myself before A-levels as well. It's very helpful. Next one, what to do next? Fix the problems, right? So you got all these problems that you compile. Now time to fix the problems. How to fix? Okay, content gaps. If you just need brief explanation, brief revision, go to our notes. If you need much more detail, you need the explanation, you need the complete understanding, go to our lesson clips found in our student resources, okay? Question types, how to fix this. You drill a few of each of the questions using the TYS topical. Why do I say TYS topical? Because that's going to be the closest to the O-levels, right? TYS papers. Okay, so that's how to fix the problems. Now, once you've done that, you've addressed those issues on your list. What is the focus of your revision now? Finish all yearly TYS, okay? All the yearly, like all 10 years must finish. So I've also made the TYS answers for you guys. Please use my TYS answers to help you with marking this. Then I move on now. So number 4 is about how do we improve at each paper? Paper-specific tips here. So paper 1 is the easiest to improve. Okay, this is really nice to improve. So if your paper 1 is below 35, you can improve a lot and very fast also. And if you think about it, right, this is 30%, but it's so easy to get the 30%, right? It's just MCQs. And this one is 50%, but it's very hard to get it compared to the MCQ, okay? So paper 1 is the easiest paper and it's the easiest to improve. Please make sure you get 35 or more in the O-levels. Try and hit that, okay? So how to improve? What's the secret? Spam. Just do a lot. Finish your TYS one, do more prelim ones. Okay, just spam. Really, that's the secret. Why does it work? Because it exposes your content gaps. Once you go and see why did I get it wrong or what's the correct answer, why is it the correct answer, you would have fixed a content gap. So just by doing your corrections, you are fixing content, increasing your content and increasing exposure to question types. Okay, what do I mean by this? Last lesson we did this question, right? This one. This annoying leaf layers question type. It's a type, right? It keeps coming out. And then they ask related questions and the diagrams are always usually quite similar also. It's a question type that you are now exposed to. So the more that you spam doing MCQs, the more you'll be exposed to. Okay, so that's why it increases your exposure. So that's the solution for paper 1. Now for paper 2, see points 1 and 2, which is what I mentioned already, and please revise the CAQs, right? Because most of the paper is just CAQs, 3 marks. If you're good at this, really 3 marks for you. This is the most important paper 2, because of the weightage. It's so big, okay? And then lastly, paper 3, goals practicals is the secret to improving. Imagine you're doing it in the lab, even though you don't have a lab, but you do all the questions. You fake the results and you just like plot a graph out of your faked results and all that. So it gives you as much practice to the real thing without having a lab, okay? So I made a YouTube video recently of practical tips as well. And this was the last one, I think. So I also linked that YouTube video in this document that y'all are looking at now. Okay, so that's how to improve for each paper. Yes, I'll have another practical lesson soon, probably in 2 weeks' time. We'll have the last like practical intensive lesson. Yes, I will have. Number 5. A lot of students ask me this. They say, hey, it's near the end of the year. You've learned all the content already. Still can't memorize everything perfectly. So what is the solution? Don't worry, you're not alone. Past batch of students also have the same problem. So I made solutions for those problems. Okay. Firstly, have you memorized all of our memory shortcuts? If no, then you see this is the easiest way to improve in your memorizing. Have you memorized them properly? Like you know each letter stands for what? It's always easier compared to a student who doesn't have them. Always, right? Why? Because this is their brain, right? And then they're trying to recall a certain piece of information. So they need to pull it out, okay? Straight away, actually I have to draw a bigger one. You need to pull it all the way from the brain straight into the paper and write in the answer, okay? It's very difficult, very big jump. But you guys have memory shortcuts. So what you do is you pull out one step, which is just, what's the memory shortcut? Let's say it's VAST, VAST, for natural selection explanation, okay? Then from each one, you ask yourself, what's this, and this? And then you write those in the answer. So you see, you don't have to make such a big jump. You have an easier life. You just jump one small step and then another small step. So that's why you always have an easier time compared to people who don't use it. Okay, so this is an area for improvement if you have not memorized all memory shortcuts. But how do I memorize what each of these things are, right? Each letter, what does it stand for? How to memorize that? Okay, that is about flashcards. So again, in the same document, I've left the link for the Quizlet flashcards in case for some reason you haven't accessed it. So the flashcards will test you on this also, on all the memory shortcuts. Okay, they ask you what's each letter that you recall. Next, it also tests you on content. It also tests you on definitions, which is very, very good when using flashcards. It's very good for definition questions. And then last one is diagram questions. Very, very good also. Okay, I've only implemented it your batch onwards because past batch of students said, yeah, we would like diagrams. You guys are the first batch who enjoys it. So that's for memorizing flashcards and memory shortcuts. Okay. And also, the more questions you do and practice, the more you will naturally memorize and retain the information. Okay, last one, which is after doing all these things, but there's a huge roadblock for you. Discipline and focus, right? How do you discipline yourself to study? How do you stay focused and not waste time and then only rush before the O levels is actually here? So simple, join our study blocks. Okay, just join it. So actually, the past week plus, right, I've been spending most of my time and energy making this thing and training my past students to be assistants for you guys. Okay, because I saw all of these, right, and it's like, okay, look, I've solved almost every problem possible for you guys, but there's a huge problem which I haven't solved until recently, which is this: how do I make you study more? Because if you could just study more, all these other things would work, right? You actually put in the time and be productive and do all these other things. So yeah, that was the solution: study blocks. Okay, so if you don't know what it is, just come for it. Save the Zoom link there and then come for it and try and see what happens. Are you more productive? So far, people have been saying yes, they are all more productive when they use it. Yeah. Any questions about any of these? Okay, do I have a recommended number of hours to study a day? It's just your needs. Okay, it's just what do you need? Yeah, like, and different people have different like tolerance, right? Different capacity for studying. Some study for 4 hours a day, right? Then they're like, hey, cannot already. The rest of the day must be other things. Well, that person has quite a low capacity, right? Some people can study 8 to 10 hours a day and they find it normal. And it really is different for everyone. I don't like to think of, oh, I must hit a certain hours. Rather, I must hit a certain number of tasks, or big tasks, or big mini goals that I want to hit. Example, this day I want to do 2 papers of 2 different subjects. Okay, and I want to do revision for another subject. Or maybe revise for 2 other subjects. So once I hit these things, right, then I feel like, okay, I've accomplished a lot for today. And that's it. I decide to not study anymore today. Then it's not about how many hours, but just once you finish the things, I'm done. Yeah, I like to think about it in terms of result instead of just how long do I spend doing the thing. Yeah. And then as for how many things should you do in a day, right? Again, it depends on your needs. Do you have like a lot of things you need to revise, or actually very few, you just want more practice? Then in that case, you don't have to have so many of the revise part as one of your tasks, right? So for those of you who are really weak, you feel really weak with bio, right? You need to analyze why are you weak. It's probably because you have a lot of content gaps. If you want to watch past lessons, go ahead, watch past lesson, all right? In Google Classroom, just scroll and find the one that you want. So that's if you're really weak. Number 1, watch past stuff because content is probably your weakness. Number 2 is I'm trying to hold a free consult session every single week. I had one yesterday already. And the point is for weak students to get the extra attention and ask me those more basic questions. Because I know that among you guys, there are students who are faster, better, there are students who are slower and need more help. So that is the point of me making the free consults, right? It's for those weak students. So that's what I would say. That's the best way to do things. How do you improve your answering techniques? The first step will be this one: compile the suck list. Okay, then look at what are the question types that you suck at. Then you go and improve those one by one. You drill those one by one. And also the general tip is, are you spamming relevant keywords? If you do that, you'll improve your answering technique for all questions. Yeah, so spam relevant keywords and then adhere to the FIRE technique, the FIRE checklist for open-ended questions. If you can hit these, right, you will get very, very good already for your answering techniques. This one, right, Also, just try and be as close to the CAQ answer as you can be, okay? Because in the paper 2 intensive lesson, for those who like failed their paper 2, then I showed them the CAQ compared to their answer. CA, spot the difference. They see, oh, so many keywords missing. Some parts like elaboration is not there. And then those are all the parts where it didn't get ticked, or the teacher put a caret, something is missing. The closer you can get to the CAQ answers, the higher chance your answer will be good and not correct. If you have too much things to do at no time, you need to reduce, you need to sacrifice some stuff. Like example, one of your things that you want to do is make notes for this subject, all these topics. Maybe you need to sacrifice that. Okay, maybe instead of making notes so detailed, you make super simple, just important things about those each topic. So you need to sacrifice some things, and then if not, you won't have time. Yeah, okay. So first I ask myself, am I being productive and actually focus when I study, or am I wasting time? If you're wasting time, try and come from study blocks, you'll be more productive. Then second, you need to sacrifice the less important stuff. Ask yourself, if I had no time and I only could do 1 or 2 things for each subject, what is most important? Then you just do that. Hey guys, so I'm going to show you how to actually plan your revision into your calendar. Because you can know what to focus on, you can know what to do, you can know all your weaknesses and these are the papers you're going to do. But unless you actually put in your calendar, you won't be secure that you actually have things under control. You probably will miss out doing some topics, papers or revision and have to rush near the end if you don't plan it out. This is actually what a lot of the top students naturally do. I used to do this myself and I've actually talked to other tutors and they also did it themselves when they were students. This is something that if you don't already do, I'm going to teach you how. If you already do it and you have your own version, good. Then you watch this video and see if you can learn any tips and implement anything new. So I'm actually going to imagine like I'm a student and I'm going to go through and put even on the calendar here, okay, where I will make annotations and as if I'll plan the entire revision out. Okay, so this is a step-by-step, super detailed, like crazy video for you. First thing, remember your focus is to finish the TYS yearly. This is your main focus. So I put this table here. This is your main focus. Oh yeah, and by the way, guys, I will share this entire template right with you so you can edit it on your own and use it for yourself. So this is an example, okay? I just put an example. Maybe this is the stage you are at now. You have done all these already. And notice I put a column for done corrections because it really matters, right? Quality is more important than quantity. You must know why you got every question wrong. And that means doing corrections properly. If not, you won't learn and then there's no benefit to your O-level grades. Okay, so these are the, look at this, paper 1, paper 2. Once you've done it, you just put a tick like that. So I'm using an emoji, but ideally you will print this out and you will stick it on your wall. And then you can physically tick, okay, with your pen. That will be much better. And then there's a done corrections column as well. Okay, so this is for the yearly. This all must be done. The TYS yearly must be done before you actually take that paper. So paper 3 is first. If you have, let's say, up to here only, and you don't have access to these, it's okay. You don't have to do all the, every single year here. But you do have access to all these, right? So before paper 2, the actual paper, all these must have been done. Paper 1, not all done yet, is okay. You can so-called save it for before the paper 1. Then before that, all these must have been done. Now, if you are done with TYS, which some people will be done early, what do you do when you have extra time, right? You want more practice. This is where you can put other papers. So I've given an example here. These are past prelim papers. So imagine this student has done these and they record it on this table. So every time you want more papers to do, you just choose the paper, you add it here to your table, and then when you're done, you give yourself a tick. When you're done corrections, you give yourself another tick. So that's how this one works. And then for this side, what is this column, right? Okay, so this is tracking your topical revision and whether you got things covered. So for this column, content okay, if your content is 7 out of 10 or more, which most of you should be for almost all topics, because you've already been through all this part of the year, you've learned all the syllabus already, so your content for most topics should be okay already. Now there might be a few topics, so this is an example student, a few topics where they are still bad at and they feel like, okay, I'm still lost in that topic, then you put a cross, okay? So for the rest you can put a tick. Most of them should be a tick at this point, at this stage. Next, you'll notice the TYS topical column. So I only would want you to do anything topical if you feel your content is not okay. Because this column honestly should not be the focus at this stage. What should be the focus is this, okay? TYS yearly papers. So if you're still doing topical, it's quite a time sink, and actually if you already put a tick here and you still do, it's a waste of time. So instead, you're only going to do them for topics which you are still lost or bad at. Then that will help you with making sure that you're good at that topic's content. Okay, so once these are done, we'll put a tick in all these 3. Okay, then memorize flashcards. So the thing about bio content heavy topic is that even though you may be okay at the topic and all that, but if enough time has passed and you haven't touched on it much, then you sit for the exam, you will forget some of the details. It's normal. So we want to make sure our memory is fresh and strong. So how do we do that? Especially before we take the exam, we want to make sure that we got everything covered, all the small details also remember, all the small keywords. So for that, you use our flashcards, our Quizlet flashcards. So if you're a student, then you will have this. Now if you're not our student, you're watching this video, you don't have our flashcards. What you can do though, is you can still actively recall using our notes. So example, we can look at this. Then what you can do is you can cover this up, right? You can cover this part up when you look at the notes. You can just test yourself. Okay, CNS consists of what? Brain and spinal cord. What is the PNS made of? Cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and all the sense organs. What are the 5 sense organs? Then don't check this, Just like eye, skin, mouth, ear, and nose. Okay, so then you move on. Okay, neurons. What does this part do? Dendrite. What is the dendron? What is the cell body? What's the nucleus do here? What's the axon? What does it mean? Can we define it? And then you just recite as much content as you can. So that's active recalling. So for flashcards, what it is, it's basically a more nicely packaged version and more bite-sized. It just makes it a lot better doing this process. But even if you don't have the flashcards, you can still do this process. So you can still actually tick this column as well, okay, once you've done that. Okay, next is doing or reciting CAQs. So CAQs, it's quite a basic thing, but they are extremely important, especially because especially for your O-levels, because they keep on coming up. And even in the application questions, the CAQs are still being used. The answers are still being used, just that the question is now different. So I would definitely want you to revise this. The least you should do is read it. That's the least you should do for all topics. Read through it. Okay. Then for the things which you are not so good at, then you recite them. Okay, so firstly, you notice this one that I said here, memorize, right? Flashcards. So you can do the same thing for this. You can also use active recall. For our students, the flashcards do contain these definitions already, but you can use active recall. So you can like block out this, don't look at it, and then try and define the term reflex action. And what does it mean? Then, okay, so first, don't look at the answer. Try it out yourself. Even if you haven't seen this topic for quite a while, just try it out yourself. See how close you can get. Okay, then you see the answer, and then you try again. Okay, so that would be how I recite the CAQs to myself, like this, reciting the CAQs. So then I do that for everything, right? Especially for those which I don't know I'm not that familiar with. So for example, this question, you're not very familiar with it. You might be very familiar with the pathway of nerve impulses, but similarities and differences, wow, you don't know many. So this is especially the ones that I would recite and not just read through. I would want to recite it to myself, see whether I got it. Okay, then as for doing the CAQs, this is optional. If you want to do them, you can actually just write it out as if it's doing a question from scratch, and then you check your answer against this. So it will be a lot slower if you do the CAQs, but it will be a lot higher quality in terms of learning and in terms of memorizing the information, because you're actually writing it out. So what situation would I do the CAQs? I would do it if it's one of these topics which I am bad at, and I will do it if I'm very unfamiliar with that CAQ. Okay, so if it feels like, hey, this is almost new to me, it's like I have no idea how to do this question, that's a CAQ I would do. So for example, this one, describe the pathway of nerve impulses in a reflex action. You might have seen this so many times. So you might be like, oh, okay, I don't actually need to do this one out from scratch. But let's find an example. Maybe this one here, right? Like, hey, I didn't really remember doing this much. And even if I did see it before, I still would have no clue how to properly answer it. Now this is an example of a question that I would want to do completely on paper. Okay, so that's how we make sure that all our topics are good. We do topical TYS only if needed, and these two are so-called maintenance to make sure that you really do have everything fresh in your mind and cemented in your mind before actually taking the paper. So here's your task. You have to do all this and all this within this time frame up till your exam. So now how do we put that inside the calendar? Okay, so the first step to doing that is once you print it out, right, you're going to refer to your exam schedule and you're going to put in all your relevant exams. There's no point putting in other people's exams, so just put in your own exams. Now everyone's is different, so I'm not going to put it in for you because then the template wouldn't work for everyone. I will just give an example right now. Okay, so I'll pause this and then I'll come back when I fill in the exams. Okay, so as you can see, I have written down all the exams that if I was a student I'd be taking. So this is an example of a triple science student who takes, A Math, E Math, Geography as well. So you can see that's October, and then these are the November exams. And then yes, I'm now going to add in, right, the notes column on the left. So we're going to divide each one, like just draw some lines to divide it, and then it will be your task list for that week. Okay, so what I've done is I've just separated all these weeks, as you can see with these lines. Okay, and then now I can start putting in what I must accomplish by that week if I want everything to go on track. So now I'm just going to put in the stuff for bio, okay? But you can use this exact same calendar and put in more stuff for your other subjects. So it doesn't have to just be a planner for bio, it can be also for everything if you don't already have one. So here's what I would do. I noticed that I have bio paper 3 on 17th, right? 17th October. And by that time, I ideally want to have covered all this, which is I want to make sure I've memorized. I want to make sure that I'm very familiar with the CAQs by the time I do my first bio paper. And after all, the bio paper 3 contains theory questions which are very similar to paper 2, although it's very minority, right? But still, I will need my content. So I want to make sure that my content and my CAQs are very good because these things will come out in the paper 3. So that's why I put all these already. You see, I want to make sure I do flashcards and CAQs for topics 1 to 6. And then this one for topics 7 to 12, this one for topics 13 to 18. So that means by the time that I take this, I should have finished all this already. Okay, so I can actually add a note there by 16th. Yeah, I can even add a note. Okay, so now I can actually go, okay, let's stay in the eagle eyes view now, the bird's eye view. So other than putting all these, right, oh yes, just a disclaimer, we should be quite fast with these, okay? Don't spend way too long on all these things because we still want to get most of the time spent on the practice papers. Okay, so now to prepare for the bio paper 3, what would this student need to do? Okay, so let's look at this. This student has already done a lot of paper 3s, which is great. They need to do the corrections for these now, right? So we could put that at the front, at the top, do corrections. For the paper 3s, that's already been done. Okay, it will show up soon on the screen. And then what's next? Maybe this student needs to do other papers, right? They could be prelim practical papers, they could be yeah, whatever other practical papers that they have access to that they can do. So I would, if I was this student, I would start writing them down in this column, okay, of those prelim practical that I want to do. So maybe I'll write here, do 2 paper 3 as ghost practicals. Okay, so ghost practicals is a concept that I've mentioned multiple times. Is when you don't have access to a lab, but you still do as much of the paper as you can, imagining that you were actually doing the experiment. So I'll do 2 of that each week. So do 2 paper 3s, ghost practical. And then this week, the last one, maybe I only can afford to do 1. Yeah, 1 paper 3. Okay, because there's only 2 days before the actual exam. So that's what we'll write down here to plan for the upcoming exam on 17th. So you notice, right, I'm actually pushing a lot of the content, memorizing and familiarizing with the CAQs upwards, right, towards the start of October. Why? Because if you look at the exam schedule, you have so many things that are like consecutive days in the second half of October. So it'll be really hectic, right? You will have much less time to do bio. You will have much less time to look at content. So your time will be very tight here, which is why I purposely push everything up to this area. Okay, so you can consider this concept of pushing things to certain weeks where it's more free for your other subjects as well. So if I were you looking at this, right, I will push a lot of things to these few weeks. A lot of content revision and all that. I'll push it up here because once I get here, what's going to happen is that before the actual exam, you will switch your entire mindset to just focusing on that exam, on that subject. So you see, after 17, right, what will happen is that your entire brain will just switch to how can I best do well in English, and everything will be about English, right? And then look at 22nd, it will just switch to geog, then next it will switch to math, then switch to chem. So you see, you're going to have very little time. Your time is tight in these places. Although you can get a lot of good revision done on the day of the exam itself, after you go home, you can still do a lot of good revision. But you notice that here is when you have more flexible time. So that's why I push all these things here. Okay, the next step in my plan is that I want to make sure I do all 10 years before the paper 2 of bio, which is here. Okay, so I must finish all TYS before 1st November for paper 2, and I must finish all my TYS for paper 1 before 10 November. So let's put those in. Okay, so as you can see, I've added in the paper 2 TYS, okay, as well as paper 2 prelim paper. So in all these weeks, right, I would aim to do one of each. Now, if you have already done all the TYS yearly, then instead you could increase the number of prelim papers or other papers that you're doing. And you don't have to follow my exact number, okay? You might feel like, oh, this is too much, or you might feel it's too little and you want to do more. It really depends on your scenario. So here's what I will do. 2 papers here, 2 papers here, 2 papers here, right? And then these 2 weeks, just the TYS, because there's so many other exams. Confirm we'll have a lot less time. Yeah. And then 1st November is the actual paper 2. Then notice that now the priority changes, right? It changes now to paper 1. So now we do paper 1 TYS 3 here, and then 6 prelim here, paper 1s, because there's so many prelim papers, you can do so many. And this one you can do 4, and then 2, okay, because there are less days before it reaches. Actually, I'm not sure if there's less days. Okay, maybe I could move some of this down here, right? Yeah, because it's 10th November. But you get the idea now that we strategically plan out from a far perspective first, and then now let's put it inside which days we want to actually do these things. So now you have 2 choices. You can plan which are the exact days you're going to do all these things. You can put them inside this calendar. Or during that week itself, then you can choose what stuff to put onto the calendar for every day that you're going along. So that way it's less rigid, it's more flexible, and there are upsides to that. So I think most people will likely be able to finish the weekly plan like what I've been doing here. But they might not go so far to the daily plan, because that might be a bit overkill for some people. So if that's you, it's okay, but you must minimally have this weekly plan laid out on the left side. Okay, and one last thing to add, if you notice this, right, this plus sign is to tell myself, review the suck list, which is all the questions that you did poorly in, you didn't know it was very hard, you had a careless mistake, a misconception. As you're doing all this revision, you want to compile that list. And so every time before the exam, the day before, you will review this. Plus, you should read through my exam hacks as well. So let me just go add that in right now. Okay, so you notice that here before each of the bio papers, I put a plus sign with a circle. You can put any symbol you want, honestly. Like, it can be Illuminati, it can be a triangle, whatever it is. This is just so that I don't have to rewrite it every time on the calendar itself. Yeah, so this is how I would prepare this. And then if I were you, if you have an iPad, tablet that you like to write this on, then you can write it and then print out like what is shown here. Or you can just print out directly and then go and do all the writing on it. Yeah, so don't need to be so perfectionistic about this thing. It's all about helping you plan. It's just a tool. It's not the actual exam that you're taking, right? So don't need to do it perfectly. It's just to help you plan. So what I would do is, I would download the template. I'll put the link in here under this video for the template, the blank template that you can download. And then you can print it out yourself and actually start planning your revision as well. I know that this planning process can be tedious, can seem like, oh wow, it's quite a use of time, but it will save you a lot of time and it will make you a lot more secure that you are going to get everything revised by the right dates. So I know that, it can be a stressful period and there are many exams, but you will get through this. Okay, so all the best for O-levels.